for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and joining me in the studio today are two of our panelists that are going to educate you on all things green, growing, and crawling, apparently. We'll have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their specialty. So, Phil, we'll start with you.
I'm Phil Nixon. I'm a retired extension entomologist from the University of Illinois, and so entomologist means I'm a bug guy, so I'll be talking about creepy crawlies.
Creepy crawlies. All right, Chuck.
I am Chuck Voigt, and I am a retired horticulturist from the University of Illinois. And my specialties were vegetables and herbs, but at one time I thought I was going to be a woody plant specialist, so I can cover that, and certainly I've done like fruit trees and some of those things.
Okay, got a nice cross-section of knowledge here today. So again, topping our news at this hour, cicadas.
Again.
That's all we want to talk about. So Phil's going to fill us in on some cicada business. So here we go. Did you want this one first? Is that the...
Whatever.
Okay.
One thing we've heard is information about the periodical cicadas, and that you know they're coming out twice as many as they were, but that's only on a statewide basis. And I've seen various things on the news and others that are just plain wrong. But imagine that. But the point is that the Great Southern Brood and the Northern Illinois brood are emerging at the same time this year, which covers the bulk of Illinois. There are 5 broods or 5 areas in which cicadas come out in Illinois, but the other 3 are relatively small in geographic area. Generally, no 2 broods overlap to any great extent, and so what we've got is essentially our meeting in central Illinois, more or less along the Mackinac River, or another way of looking at it from essentially north of Springfield through to Lincoln and to Champaign and so on is kind of or Rantoul. It's kind of the area where the 2 groups are meeting. It's the first time it has happened since 1803, and this is the and in that interim we have 13-year broods in the southern half of the U.S., 17-year broods in the northern half, and those 2 are coming out together. They're coming out at the same time, but not in the same place, and so that's an important thing that you need to look at. And every year when we get these sorts of things happening, I get in the years past, and I've been working through several emergences with 5 different broods in the state of Illinois, and doing this for 37 years. You get 2 kinds of calls or questions from people. One is, why am I not seeing those cicadas, and where do I go to get rid of away from the cicadas? And the next phone call is, where do I go to find them because I don't have them and I feel deprived? And you know the insects are going to come out. The nymphs crawl up a trail, or any vertical object, and they emerge first as what I like to refer to as their angel phase. Oh. When they're white like this, they look to me like little angels. You got to be a bug guy to think that, I guess. And then after a few hours, they will harden off. And there's so many of them coming out that they're coming out over a period of several days, and you'll be able to see that white phase before the outside covering is hardened off. But a lot of the reason why you might have cicadas or not have cicadas has a lot to do with the area that we have, and realize that when cicadas come out, they typically only are going to fly a couple hundred feet. So every 13 or 17 years, they're spreading 200 or 300 feet, maybe 1,000 feet, but not to any great extent. And the ones at the edge of those areas are mainly going to be picked off by birds and mammals and things like this. So there's a real high mortality. If there's a high mortality in cicadas, no matter where they are, because they just sit out there and get eaten. It's kind of like, we got so many of us, you can't possibly eat us all, you know, that sort of thing. But at the edge, yeah, you can possibly eat you all, and they do. And so generally, fringe areas don't survive very well, which means keeps us separate as well, because you start thinking up and you go, well, go for 17 times out in the last 221 years since Lewis and Clark were making their big trek over
Oh,
the
we're going
Louisiana
way
Purchase.
back.
We're going way back here, or 1803. And so,
Before
you know,
Abe was born.
before Abe was on. Well, yeah. You go back 10 years on the.
Are
on
you
the
excited about this?
Years. Oh, it's fabulous.
I want to know who's calling and saying, I don't have cicadas.
I've actually had people call, where can I go get them so I can collect them, put them in my yard, so in 17 years I can have them again. I got several calls that way from the Chicago area before,
Who in their right mind would want that?
because they enjoy nature.
I
How's
do
that
too.
for a slam?
Chuck and I do too, but we're not looking forward to this emergence.
No, we just let it happen.
Yeah,
We don't
It's one of
encourage
those
it.
things that happens.
Is this one of your lovely?
Yeah, this is one of my lovelies. Yeah, this is what they look like, except it's much larger. The insects are only about 1.25 inches long, so this is about twice as long, or 4 times the bulk than what you would normally have a cicada, of one of the periodical cicadas. This is about the size of the annual or dog day cicada, but it's painted like a periodical, and so this is what you're going to see, but instead of being this long, they're about that long.
Now, I
So-
wanted to ask you, we were talking before we started rolling. You said the males will emerge before the females, and that's
Most insects do that.
okay. And they're the ones that sing too,
Right,
right? So, what can we expect moving forward in the next couple of weeks when we start to hear that at night? Just know that it's the males, and they are singing
Well, first off, you won't hear it at night. These sing during
Oh.
the day.
during the day.
That's
okay.
the difference between them. That was another thing I heard on the news a couple
Oh, I
nights
thought
ago.
they sung at
Well,
night.
they're going to be up all night. You know, no, they're going to be quiet at night.
See, I didn't know that.
The annual cicadas sing at night or in the evening. The periodicals sing during the daytime, primarily only when the sun is shining. If it happens to be a dreary morning, you will hardly hear any at all until that sun comes out, and then all of a sudden, bing, they're on.
Okay.
So yeah, it's sunshine. It's bathing beauty time. You know, it's out there. You know,
Awesome.
and the thing is that in Illinois, what we have is if we go back a couple hundred years, our whole area is dominated by prairie fires. And how do prairie fires burn? Well, they burn with the normal wind direction, which is primarily going to be out of a west or southwest or northwest, but generally out of a west. And in Illinois and throughout the Midwest, we have a lot of north-south running rivers, and we have things such as not just the Mississippi, but the Illinois, the Rock River, the Lagrange, the Des Plaines River, Embarrass
All the
River,
rivers.
Kaskaskia River, primarily all run north and south.
Sure.
And the same thing happens in Indiana, same thing happens in Ohio. And so essentially, if you had at a prairie fire sometime in the last 150, 200 years that burned off all the trees, you killed all the cicadas of that prairie fire. Because they're feeding on the roots underground as nymphs. And if a tree dies above them, they're toast.
So depending on
They
where
just
you
won't
are,
be up where they get to be toast in the fire. You know, they're down underneath. And so we tend to have them, and Peoria is a great example of that. There are very few cicadas in Peoria, but lots of them in East Peoria. And what's in between Peoria and East Peoria? The Illinois River, which is a fire break.
interesting.
There are upland areas in the northern part of Peoria that are up on some limestone bluffs. They have cicadas, but down below they don't.
Interesting.
And again, limestone blocks are a fire break. Similarly, when we look at people in housing areas, as a general rule of thumb, before 1970, when somebody was putting houses into an area, they came in and put the houses in around the trees. But construction has changed about 1970 to where generally when you do a housing development, first thing you do is you doze out all the trees, kill every tree in there. What happened to the cicadas when you killed the trees? They're dead.
Gotcha.
And so housing developments that have been developed since around 1970, 75, 80 are probably not going to have any cicadas in them whatsoever. Towns that are, and towns in this area in Illinois, if they were established in cornfields, no cicadas. They don't feed on corn roots.
Okay.
You know, it has to be probably near a north-south moving river or a good-sized creek,
Okay.
and there you're going to have them.
All right. So now you know what to look for depending on where you are. All right, thank
Where
you
the
very
trees
much. So
are.
get ready. All right, Chuck, you've been in the garden. Let's see.
I have been in the garden.
What did you bring us?
Well, I just was checking out some herb things so I can keep my herb credentials up to date. This is just a
But
garden.
you're a Chuck, not an herb.
Well, whatever. I'm not a herb. Garden sage, and as you can see, I did not give this a hard prune this spring, because if you only want the leaves, you would go out in the spring and cut it really hard. You don't want to do that in the fall because it kind of messes with the winter hardiness. But I'm going to have lots of flowers on this plant. I don't need to harvest as much sage as other people might, but if you then want to encourage the leaf growth, as soon as the pretty flowers are gone, cut it back down here to this first leaf, and then it will sprout side shoots and grow lots of leaves. French tarragon. I wrote my master's thesis on asexual reproduction of French tarragon, which, as it turns out, is fairly easy if you get them at this stage where it's just very lush and full of moisture and growing rapidly.
I don't know that I've ever eaten that. How do you enjoy it? What part do you eat, I guess?
Well, the leaves.
The leaves? Okay, I didn't know if
And
you ate the...
it has kind of a licorice anise sort of a taste, but it also has an estragol
Oh, I can
in it,
smell
that numbs. And so it was used as a toothache remedy way back when. You just chew on
Is
a
this
bunch
the
of...
toothache plant? Is that what
No.
No, that's a different plant?
That's-
Disregard that, people.
That's,
I'm still
It's-
a cadet.
step back, grasshopper.
Well, when you said toothache, I drew the line.
Well, you know, around the Mediterranean where it was very popular, you know, and there wasn't much of anything else
Sure.
other than maybe pliers. Chewing on that was, if you were to take a little nip of that, it would numb the end of your tongue.
Interesting.
And so that, it's also popular with like fish dishes, because if the fish has been away from the sea an extra day or two, it doesn't hurt to numb your tongue a little bit.
Understood.
This is the native Monarda fistulosa, the purple flowered one that's just everywhere on the ditch banks and everywhere out where there was prairie in Illinois. That's getting ready to come up and get going. And then this one.
Bee balm, right?
Yes.
More or less.
More or less.
Okay.
The
Same genus, at least.
yes.
Okay, good enough.
Yeah. has purple flowers instead of the real bee balm normally has red or some form of red. This is lovage. If you don't, you know, it's in the celery family. I think you can use it more or less like celery, but you can also use it in your Bloody Mary because it has hollow stems. You can use it as a swizzle
Gotcha.
and also as a straw. So it's
It smells like a sweet celery.
yeah, I think it's somewhere between celery and, oh geez, what's the one they candy? Anyway, it's in that group. So those are, you know, some of what's happening in the herb garden as we're.
Let's do a couple of
started.
your pictures too. You
Okay.
want to start with, or any specific photo you'd like to start with?
Oh, how about the asparaguses?
Asparagus, my fave. There they are, in all their glory.
Yeah, and I was out with a yardstick anyway. I was going to get a meter stick and be very scientific, but they found the yardstick first. So you can see there, this is what we looked at when they were just those little babies. Just for Shane, I'm going to say some of them were the size of nut cup doilies. And but most of them have come on. There's one that I have marked that only had like one stalk last year, and I was in danger of dying. So that one's marked. That's a do not cut.
Ah,
Everybody else we've been cutting. You can start to see the diameter going down now, but partly because it started so early. They kind of snuck up on me there in April. You know, we got so warm that they started way ahead of time. And I brought you a bunch, even though I hate to reward your lack of patience in growing your own and being able to wait 3 years.
3 years. Come on, that's a long time to wait.
But it seems like
But when you've got friends who grow it,
You don't have to plant it at all.
it seems like we just talked about those little plants just
Yes.
first emerging, and
You're
now
right.
they're very robust. The Millennium particularly started a little earlier and was very nice. Those are pre-trimmed and ready to go. There's no fiber at the bottom or anything. Your friend Donna took care of it.
always, Donna, spoil me rotten. Thank you very much.
Okay.
You didn't get to enjoy yours, did you? You said that.
No,
it was-
I just noticed them yesterday, but they were 5 foot tall ferns now
Now,
already. so.
when that happens, when it gets away from you like that, what do you do to maintain the patch? Do you just leave it? Do you cut them down? What's the?
Well, as I said, it's kind of a recharge year
Mm-hmm.
for him. You would fertilize it and just let it grow
Just
up
let it
and
go.
get all that energy in the roots, and then hopefully next year, when he finds it on time, they're going to be fatter and more of them, and you'll be able to
Okay.
harvest a longer season. My new patch is doing so well that that's what I did with my old patch that's kind of in the weeds
Mm-hmm.
and they're down to kind of skinny. I just mowed that off once more as they were starting to come up. We picked it once, and now I'm going to fertilize it and just let that one grow
Just
up
let it
and,
grow up.
and either recover, or if it's just always going to be piddly, then we're going to just keep the, because this one is producing obviously more than we can keep up with.
Lovely.
And that's well, 17 plants, 18 survived, and the one we're not harvesting. So 17 plants, and we're not getting that much each time, but it's certainly,
a good asparagus year, huh?
it is.
Okay. All right, Phil, we're back to you with more critters.
Well, this is the time of year in which we get floating fluff. And essentially what these are, you'll see a little piece of, look like, the size of a head of a corsage pin, or maybe a little bit smaller, just go floating by your eyes, and I've started to notice it. And what it is the one you just had before.
This one?
That one right there. And that's what you're seeing this is a woolly aphid. The most common one that we have around is this one. This is the woolly apple aphid. Woolly aphid or woolly apple aphid. And you can see that it has a couple pairs of wings on it. But it's essentially got lots of white waxy filaments on it. And they really seem to just kind of float through the air. And the way that you can tell for sure that it is one of these is if it changes direction, because they tend to come on the wind, but they are able to have powered flight, and they will all of a sudden move a little bit real slow over. And
That's how
this
you
is their
know.
dispersal stage, and it's interesting to me that it tends to occur, and I think probably on purpose, at about the same time you're starting to see cottonwood fluff start to come off of cottonwoods. And if you've got that blowing around, then something that's going to want to eat one of these guys, it's just, just kind of going with the wind, so to speak. This is the classic bug couch potato. I mean, it just kind of goes where the wind blows. And they're going to overlook it, and they're going to get away. But this is what the insect looks like on the host plants. Various members of the rose family, where apple is located, and will produce these sorts of things, and they're not very obvious when you get this close up on them. They look pretty obvious. Here's Cotoneaster with them on it, which is also in the same family, related plant, and it gets some of the same bugs. And there are other related insects to this that also occur on other rose family plants, and so and they also will get on other related things. Will get onto elm and on beech and some other types of plants.
they a pest
but
in
it
the
is
garden?
kind of interesting. People will kind of wonder, is this a bug or what is it? It just looks like a piece of fluff that went by. It's actually a woolly aphids, and they are out now, and it's kind of neat to see something that just kind of lazily floats by. You
Friend or
can
foe
call
in
them
the
like they're a
garden.
piece of fluff or a tiny angel or whatever, however you want to look at it. And they're doing their thing, and it's kind of neat. It's just nothing that really causes. In some of them, the apple aphid will go to an alternate host and get down on the roots of, I believe it's poplar and some things like that, and can cause some root damage. But they actually alternate generations from looking like this on the upper part to living down on the roots and on a different tree. But they're kind of an interesting feature of nature, and they're out right now.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. More picks from Chuck in the garden. What are we looking at?
Those are the two red rhubarb plants, and the one, the bigger one is the Canada Red, which is famous for having great big petioles, and they're bright red on the outside, but they're just green on the inside. Where the the Crimson Red doesn't get nearly as big, but they're red all the way through. So if you cook the Crimson Red, you get this wonderful pink agglomeration of bad taste.
Oh, I forgot. You have a thing with rhubarb.
Yeah, but I love to grow it, so there it is, and they're doing well. That is the music garlic, the cultivar music. I think I gave you a bulb.
Yes, you did.
It has just gone crazy. You can see it's almost a yard tall, and it's probably going to grow, through the rest of May, and then it gets about as big as it's going to, and then it'll get a top set that we'll cut off and use for something else. But that's great. One time before, when we had what I called a Zone 7 winter, when it really didn't get super cold. Well, this year we had that 10-day period where it was very cold, but in Kankakee County where this was, we had like 5 inches of snow and then a couple of 1-inch things. So it had a nice blanket over it. And it was, as soon as that melted and we went back to our warmer than normal, it was up and growing. That last time is when I had 4-ounce bulbs, 4 bulbs to the pound, which is incredible for a hardneck garlic. And so I'm hopeful that maybe we're going to be back in that
Another
that
banner
range.
year.
This is the flowers on gillfeather turnip, which also came through the winter, which doesn't normally happen too much. But again, they're under snow cover, and they came back. Also, the rutabagas next to them, because the rutabagas and the gillfeather turnips are fairly closely related. The gillfeather is like a hybrid between a rutabaga and a turnip. I got rid of the rutabagas because I want seed of the gillfeathers, and so they're up, and the insects are doing their thing with them, and we're having fun.
So far, so good. Have you guys, now that we're in May, would you plant out, or would you guys wait a little bit longer? What's the industry?
I succumbed to the urge.
You looked ahead and...
Well, because last year I got shut out on my gypsy hybrid peppers. Couldn't find them. And I went, they were there, I bought them. And it was so warm yesterday. I planted.
You did it.
I planted my 8 tomatoes and my 8 peppers. I managed to hold myself back. I didn't get 16 peppers this year because that was way too many last year. But I did find the gypsies, and so we're going to have gypsy peppers. I put out celery. I put out some leeks.
What about you, Phil? Got the garden?
I got to clean the brush off a garden first. So.
The entomologist, you're going to wait.
Literally
That makes sense.
It literally has branches of trees laid in the middle of the garden.
That tracks. That tracks.
Things happen during the winter. It's but generally about the middle of May is when I would put out the first tomatoes.
You kick it into gear.
And an important thing associated with that is that we get black cutworms that'll come out and start chewing off your tomatoes, and as well as other things in the garden. But cold crops such as cabbages and broccoli and so on probably have more of a nasty taste to cutworms than tomatoes do, although tomatoes have got nasty things in them too. But at any rate, the black cutworm is essentially about the size of your little finger. They get up to about 1.5 inches long, and they're kind of a fat-bodied caterpillar. Comes out at night, crawls across the surface, and when it sees something tasty, it'll curl its body around and eat it off, and you'll get a little stub of a tomato, which is about 1/2 inch to 1 inch tall. And that was just that 1/2 inch or inch was enough space for for the cutworm to curl its body around and eat it off. It does the same thing out in the fields to field corn,
Gotcha.
and so it's a problem to farmers as well.
We've got about 30 seconds. Go ahead, Chuck.
Mine have collars around them so that they can't get to the base of my transplant.
And as long as that gets in about a half an inch, they won't dig underneath it.
Okay.
Or another thing you can do is put a stick right against the stem
Okay.
to make the
You gotta leave it on that.
to make the stem too big for the caterpillar to wrap around.
Thank you, Phil. And thank you guys for watching. We will see you next time. Good night.